number for you.
Uh-huh.
The number is 9,369.
That's a pretty amazing number that you have there.
That's the exact number of days between the release of your debut album
Uh-huh.
and your first show in Poland. Over 9,000 days we've been waiting for your
That
show.
was, we were thinking when we played Poland, and we thought, let's give it somebody said let's give it 10,000 days, and I said that sounds like a long time. Maybe we should scale that back to in the 9,000s.
So are you ready to play Poland now?
Yes, for sure.
Definitely in Poland you have very, very patient fans.
I think we do, and
we were supposed to play there opening for Guns N' Roses. We were supposed to play in Warsaw, I think in 91, 92.
Yeah.
And
What happened?
well, they canceled because
they did stuff like that.
yeah, it was more likely that they would cancel the show, so we never got to come.
And then, probably by the time Poland had a large enough number of fans that wanted us to come and play, we weren't touring as much as we did in the early days, specifically from '87 to then. By '94, when Super Unknown came out, we didn't tour quite as much.
Right.
And the festival you're gonna play in Poland is called Live Festival. And it's kind of
Uh-huh.
it's kind of a special one because the venue of the festival is Oświęcim, the place when there was a big concentration camp.
Right.
During
Auschwitz?
Yes, during the Second World War. So how do you relate to the concept of the festival? Because it's not only entertainment, it's also kind of a promotion of peace and tolerance. This kind of festival. What do you think about this idea?
Well, that's great. It certainly is good for the community in the city there. I suppose they want to understand that they have a not just a negative history, but a very vital current, life and community and culture, and they probably want to put the emphasis on that rather than on perhaps some scar from the past. That seems to be the case. Is that correct? Yeah. Well, I think that's important. That there are people who live there and have children, and they go to school and they become doctors and painters, and I think that they should celebrate, the kind of life and community that they're coming into, and not have to bear the stigma of, a very tragic war.
Do you often play such an extraordinary venues as Soundgarden, places with some kind of a history or with some kind of a...
We have.
Yeah, I mean, not every show, obviously, but we've played a lot of interesting places and interesting sort of events, sometimes where we don't even know that there's supposed to be a theme to the event until we get there and start setting up, and then someone said...
Communist rally in Italy in 1988 or 89 in Pisa, and we didn't know that it was a communist rally until after we were playing. The police came and were trying to put a squash to the sound, the music, and some demonstrations, and I think we got angry at the promoter for not letting us at least participate in that aspect of the show.
Yeah, I think that the rally was one of the main themes was to legalize drugs and
specifically, right?
Heroin and marijuana. Yeah, but also the promoters didn't tell anybody that we didn't know. So we were being asked in an interview, it's so awesome that you came out to support this legalization of drugs issue in Italy. And in the meantime, there's police with automatic weapons everywhere, standing around us. So yeah, that was different. I mean, to us, there was sort of that was a confrontation, not like a celebration of something or a specific focus of a theme for an event that includes music. So it was weird.
You're doing interviews for a really, really long time, and I wonder what's the most annoying question that you hear all the time?
Influences. That's easy. Yeah, I think that's one of the most boring questions. First of all, it's if you can't hear it in the person's music, then it's sort of a waste of time to ask about, and influences tend to be sort of obvious, or it's a question that's always asked so often that to me, it's like it's been asked us almost every interview we've ever done for nearly 30 years. It just the answer is really never that informative to me. you know, we're a band with four different guys, four different people bringing in musical ideas, four different groups of musical taste, which changes all the time. And then at the same time, when we write a song, it just kind of sounds like a Soundgarden song. We don't really sort of divide it up into different categories based on influences usually. We might talk about it if it reminds us of something, but yeah, that's one of those ones that also it's maybe one of the reasons why it bothers me is because it seems to interest people still so much that ask it. Maybe not a reader or someone that's watching a TV show, but the journalist always seems to be really interested in that, and they're never really interested in the answer unless it's a simple one. Like if I could throw out one person or one band and say that was it for me.
We could say dozens of bands, and they're just going to write down Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, and they have a hard time believing the fact that when we were together, when Chris and Hero and I were together, that we weren't listening to Led Zeppelin or Black Sabbath, that we were listening to something that perhaps has a similar derivation, you know, Bauhaus, Joy Division, Wire. We listen to American post-hardcore bands, and we listen to a lot of that. We say, well, these are the things we're listening to. Perhaps these are our influences. But it is true that when we're younger, as individuals, we certainly loved and had an affection for Led Zeppelin or Black Sabbath or AC/DC or Aerosmith, or to varying degrees. You know, Kiss and Russ. I mean, many people in our band liked one or the other, but didn't like them all. So collectively, I would not, you know, we always say we're not particularly influenced by these specific artists, but we have regard and respect for them. And the fact that we sound like them is a matter of, you know, it's a coincidence and happenstance. I mean, I suppose you can get there from listening to a lot of Bauhaus in the Flat Field and Black Flag, My War, and you can end up sounding like Black Sabbath. But
you could.
But Bad Motorfinger doesn't sound anything like Black Sabbath to me.
Imagine such situation. You meet a guy that listens to music, but he has no idea what grunge music is.
Mm-hmm.
How would you describe grunge in just 2-3 sentences to that man?
I couldn't describe it to him because I have no idea what grunge music is. I didn't title it grunge music. I don't believe that any of the bands that are sort of included in what's considered the genre called grunge sound much alike. I would ask you, do you think that Soundgarden sounds a lot like Nirvana or Pearl Jam?
Or Mudhoney?
I don't.
So what song would you give to him? One song, just to know...
Grunge?
The spirit of the music.
I would say Smells Like Teen Spirit. That's grunge to me. Sure. It's like this sort of snarky attitude, intelligent, simple, abrasive guitars, a video where they're wearing torn clothes, you know, and they look kind of like people that you might go to high school with if you're high school age.
You don't like to relate yourself to that movement?
No, it's not that I don't like it. It's that it wasn't a movement. It isn't a genre.
Right.
It's I think we're proud to be from Seattle, and we're proud to have these other bands as our friends and
our peers and influences. We certainly had influences on these bands, and they influenced us. We do see them as collectively part of the community that we share with them. I don't know if that's called grunge. It isn't something that any of us. It's not self-referential. It's somebody else gave us that label because of the particular geography that we shared, and it stuck. It's, you know, whatever. It's a way to sell magazines and a way to file records, I suppose, in a retail store.
It replaced the word Seattle because that before the word grunge started being used, it was called the Seattle Sound or the Seattle Scene, which that was sort of an easier thing to admit you're a part of, or say, yeah, we're from there, that's for sure, and we're part of that specific scene. Yes, you know, that made sense. But grunge. It was. I think Mudhoney was an example, kind of something that sounded like grunge the way I would describe it.
I guess if you had to describe Seattle, I think all the bands had a strong affection for the Stooges and Black Sabbath, as well as so many other things. If you had to put a couple together, I would say one of the distinct features of Seattle bands was they were hard rock bands that were borrowing from punk rock as well as heavy metal. And if you had to find a couple bands that are iconic of both genres, it might be Black Sabbath and the Stooges or the Ramones, you know, or Black Flag. And so that is something that all those bands have in common, perhaps, is sort of a... Okay.
I must ask for the biggest hit also in Poland from this album. Poland, every rock fan in Poland knows this song. Mothers, wives, grandfathers, Black Hole Sun. Do you remember writing that riff, writing the lyrics? Do you have an idea that it's going to be such a massive classic rock song?
No, my feeling was that it would be, it would be sort of a deep album track. If we did a version of it that felt like it should be on the album, and then when we did do a version of it, and we all agreed that it should be on the album, I think it's the 7th song, which for that album is kind of the middle, and we all sort of were comfortable with that and thought that that's kind of where that song would live. But once we started playing the record for people, it got a lot of
friends of
responses.
ours started picking out, focusing.
Yeah.
They not that it was necessarily the song they liked best on the record, because there's so many good songs on the record, but they'd pick that out and go, geez, that's your hit. This song's, that's catchy and that's going to be big, and including, Hiro Yamamoto, who's a founding member of the band. I don't know if you went that far in your research, but he came by and said, "Oh my God, you guys got that! There's your hit." And he's more of a cynic, and to say something like that, really in a positive light, was interesting. And then many of our friends as well.
And what's your favorite moment? Personally, as a fan.
I'm answering personally in that in that any of our lives are dynamic and changed. So would that answer.
It's hard to pick one. Sorry.
Yeah, I've always. That's another question that comes up a lot. It's like, what is your favorite song from that album? Where a lot of it, most of it, really for me, is based on what's happening with that song live. Because that's the most recent relationship I've had with it, and that's always changing. And
most of those songs have been my favorite song on that album at some point.
Yeah. Okay.
It's 20 years.
Yeah. Your music affects people physically and emotionally.
Does it make them throw up physically?
I rather think about goosebumps or tears or feeling energetic. And what's your emotions on stage? How would you describe your personal emotions when you're performing your songs?
it depends. If everything's going right, I'm not paying much attention to anything. I'm sort of lost in the song. And if there's some technical issue, like things aren't sounding right, then I'm kind of focusing on that. I'm trying to talk myself out of thinking about that. It's like, oh, that doesn't sound good, And I'm trying to just forget it and get back into the song. Otherwise, it's I kind of space out. I sort of get caught up in the trance of it, and I tend to not make that many memories on stage because of that, which is a weird thing. But over the years, everyone else in the band has seemed to remember more specific things that have happened in the middle of a show than me. But yeah, if it's all working right, I'm kind of lost in the moment.
It's like when Michael Jordan's going to dunk and his tongue's hanging out, and he says he's in the zone. That does happen. I mean, certainly to musicians as well as athletes in certain moments.
There's a breath thing too. I noticed on certain songs where I sing really high. 4th of July is one of them, where it has these really high moments, and Limo Wreck is one of those moments where I always play the guitar part wrong in the choruses, and it only recently occurred to me it's because I have no oxygen, and my brain's getting kind of oxygen light because I'm singing these really high notes, and then my hand starts doing the wrong thing.
Like the athlete who's running back and forth up and down the court, hyperventilating.
And then they wonder why he missed that layup. It was so easy. It was so simple. He's a professional, and he gets paid so much money.
But his tongue's hanging out. He's in the zone, and he's still missing it.